Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Janmadya Shayata Niviyad Itaratas Charteso Vigyaswarat Tene Brahma Hidaya Adikavaye Muyantiat Surayaha Tejo Varimidam Yata Vinimayo Yata Prisargo Misha Sandam Nasrena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi. O my Lord Shri Krishna, O son of Vasudeva, O all-pervading personality Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being, and by him even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen on fire or fire seen on water. Only because of him do the material universes, temporarily manifested by the three modes of material nature, appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent in a transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Dharma projita kaitavo cha paraman yamatsaram satam vedyam vastavam atra vastu shividam tapo trayon mulanam. Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kim Vapurir Ishwaraha Sadyo Hridi Avarudyate Tra Kriti Bihi Sususavistakshanat. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated, this Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are completely pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Srimad Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. Nigama kalpatarur galitam phalam, sukha mukad amrita dravya samyutam, pibata bhagavatam rasam alayam, muhur ahoraska bhuvi bhavakaha. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire to read Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Srimad Bhagavatam Grantharaja Ki Jai. So today we're continuing in the 4 nutshell verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which begin in the 2nd canto, 9th chapter, verse 33, which we covered in the last couple of days, and now we're going on verse 34. Rite ritam yat pratyeta na pratyeta chatmani tadvid yat atmano mayam yata baso yata tama. Rite, repeat, rite, without, artam, value, yat, that which, pratyeta, appears to be, na, not, pratyeta, appears to be, cha, and, atmani, in relation to me, tat, that, vidyat, you must know, atmana, mayam, illusory energy, yata, just as, abhasa, the reflection, yata, as, tama, the darkness. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. O Brahma, so this is Krishna speaking to Brahma, right? O Brahma, whatever appears to be of any value if it is without relation to me, has no reality. Know it as my illusory energy, that reflection which appears to be in darkness. So this is now really getting into the real essence of the Srimad Bhagavatam and the message of the Lord, of the devotees, pure devotees of the Lord, to the souls in Kali Yuga. The Srimad Bhagavatam was heard for 1,000 years after the disappearance of Krishna. And a large group of thousands and thousands of great sages from all over the universe came to northern India. Naimisharanya. And they sat for 1,000 years. This is in the beginning of Kali Yuga. And they listened to Srimad Bhagavatam to understand what would be the best thing for the people in this very negative age called Kali Yuga, the best means by which they could liberate themselves from the cycle of birth and death. In other words, these great sages, led by Sutta Goswami, were very concerned about the plight of us, meaning you and me, in this very negative age called Kali Yuga, the fourth cycle. There's Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, and Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga is the worst time because in Satya Yuga, 100% of the people were living in the mode of goodness and were mostly all Krishna conscious. There were very few demons. In the Treta Yuga, 3/4 of the population were following Vedic Sanatana Dharma, 1/4 weren't. In Dwapara Yuga, half the people were not following, half the people were following. And in Kali Yuga, 3/4 of the population don't follow, and that's increasing as its age goes on. And hardly 1/4 of the population world follows some kind of religious practices. So this age is the worst age to live in. Therefore, Krishna, knowing this, has made some special advantages, or called dispensations, in this age. Look that word up, dispensation, D-I-S-P-E-N-S-A-T-I-O-N. They made some special dispensations. Now, number one dispensation is that in previous ages, if you thought of doing something good, you did not get the positive result unless you actually did the act. But in Kali Yuga, if you think of doing something good, even though you don't do it, you still get the benefit, the good karma. Yeah, what does that mean, dispensation?
Exemption from a rule or usual requirement.
You see? So now we're going to go through a list of exemptions to the rules in this age, specially given to us because this age is so negative for cultivating Krishna consciousness that Krishna is making it easier for those people who want to be Krishna conscious, making it easier for them to easily get out of the clutches of the negativity of this age. So simply by thinking of doing something good in this age, you get the positive karmic, let's say, result. Previously, if you thought of doing something evil, immediately you would get the result. In this age, you have to commit the evil act to get the negative result. And previously, just thinking of doing something evil, you immediately got the karmic reaction. And then, the best of all, in this age, Kalir dosa nide rajan astihi eka mahadguna kirtanad eva krishnasya mukta sangha param bhajet. In this age, simply by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, that means even if you don't read Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam, even if you're not initiated by a bona fide guru, but if you sincerely chant the Hare Krishna mantra and completely surrender yourself to following Krishna's instructions, you can go back to Godhead. That's how powerful the Hare Krishna mantra is. But because most people born in this age are born in very low families and very low conditions. In fact, everybody in Kali Yuga is born as a Sudra. There are no real Brahmanas, real Kshatriyas, and real Vaishyas in this age. Everybody is a Sudra. Why? Because normally people do not perform the Garbhodhan samskar. There are different samskars, about 10 samskars, or acts of purification at different stages of life. The only samskar people usually do is marriage and death, right? But there are 10 of them, and the first one is called Garbhodhan samskar, before you conceive a child. There's a whole series of different activities you have to do, spiritual activities, to get purified, so that your consciousness at the moment of conception, the consciousness of the husband and the consciousness of the wife, are so elevated that Krishna chooses a pure devotee to be born as their child. This was followed in previous ages. It is not followed today. Maybe very few people follow it, very, very few. But most people just have copulation, and it's all lusty, and then the children that are born are not good quality. So everything depends on the consciousness of the husband and wife at the moment of conception. But that'll determine the quality of the child. Now, this is a science. The science to have how to have good population. Obviously, no one is following this, or hardly anyone is following this in Kali Yuga, and therefore many children are being born that are demoniac. So how do we know that? Well, in previous ages, when there were many less number of demons, every time a demon was born, there was climate change, right? Hurricanes, earthquakes, floods, tsunamis, and pestilence, war. All these things were happening every time a demon was born. There would be very inauspicious cataclysmic events taking place, like when Ravana was born or Kamsa was born. Nowadays, I mean, that before there were just a few demons. Nowadays, almost everybody being born is a demon. That's why you have such radical climate change. You see, it's not due to your emissions from your car. That's a bunch of nonsense, right? It's not due to the fact that you're not putting your glass bottles and cardboard and all those things in special bins, and they're being recycled. It's not because of that. It's not because of the cows that are farting. No. That has nothing to do with climate change. The climate change is because too many demons are being born. And and every time a demon is born, there's disruptive, natural, cataclysmic events taking place. Of course, you explain this to the scientists, oh no, this is a bunch of mythology, it's not true. What? It is true, but they refuse to accept it. They always make their own speculative theories. Okay, so simply by chanting Hare Krishna, Kalhir dosa nite rajan, in this age, there are many dosas. That doesn't mean the dosa that you eat in South India. Dosa in Sanskrit means bad things, sinful things, right? And there are many bad things in this age. But there's one great quality, astihi eka mahad guna. There's one great quality. What is that? Kirtanad eva krishnasya mukta sangha parambrajet. Simply by chanting the Hare Krishna Mahan Mantra sincerely, reverently, with deep concentration and with affection and love for Krishna, you will be liberated from the cycle of birth and death. Even if you can't understand Sanskrit, even if you don't understand the philosophy very well, even if you are very poor or uneducated or illiterate, simply by chanting this Maha Mantra very sincerely and by developing love and devotion with Krishna, you go back to Godhead. So that's a very great. Astihi eka mahad guna. This is the greatest quality of this age. And then also, there are other, what you would call perks in the Kali Yuga. That is, that by hearing regularly Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, little by little, all your previous karma goes away. It's wiped out. By taking initiation, your previous karma, which is a mixed bag of good and bad things, is put on hold. It's not eradicated completely. It's put on hold. But then, after you're initiated, if you regularly come and hear every day Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam spoken by genuine devotees, one by one, all your karmic reactions, good and bad, are wiped out and never come back again. And then, other advantages of this age, by associating with genuine devotees. See, sometimes people say, what's the most important thing for you Hare Krishnas? Chanting Hare Krishna? No. The most important thing is association with devotees. Because if you associate with real devotees, you will chant Hare Krishna. And if you chant by yourself and never associate with real devotees, you'll eventually stop. Because the association of devotees is the number one thing that helps people become Krishna conscious. Tell me who your friends are, I will tell you who you are. So if you're associating with gangbangers, speculators, and all kinds of nonsense people, you will become nonsense, no doubt about it. But if you associate just with genuine devotees, you'll become Krishna conscious. So this was the case of Narada Muni. His mother was poor. She was so poor she couldn't send her son to school. And she was a single mother. He didn't have a father. He didn't know who the father was. And she was a maidservant. And fortuitously, she served 4 pure devotees during the Chaturmasya period, 4 months of the rainy season. And they usually stay in one place at that time. And her son was with her in that little ashram of those 4 saints. And he was not, playing baseball or soccer or playing video games or anything like that. He would sit down and listen to those sadhus speaking and giving classes. Now, he didn't understand much. He was only 5 years old. But he had this tendency to hear. He liked hearing their lectures. And he also would watch them eat prasadam that his mother would make and offer to the deities and offer to the saints. And after they finished eating, whatever remnants were there, he asked permission if he could eat them. And he ate the remnants of those saints. Simply by doing those 2 things, that 5-year-old boy in those 4 months became a pure devotee. And after they left, he was alone with his mother, and his mother was bitten by a snake, and she died. Now, he's alone. He's only 5, 6 years old, but he was not afraid because he had already become Krishna conscious. Just like Prahlad Maharaj, he was educated in Krishna consciousness while still in the womb of his mother. And as soon as he was born, he was already Krishna conscious because his mother was kept in the ashram of Narada Muni, and every day he would preach to the mother and chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And Prahlad Maharaj, in the womb of his mother, because children or babies have prenatal consciousness, at least for 3 months, they are conscious. And the boy was educated while he was still in the womb. And when he was born, he was fully trained in Krishna consciousness. So here we have examples of very young children who are Krishna conscious because their mother and sometimes the father are deeply engaged in Krishna conscious activities. So if you want to really educate your child, and then the opposite is true. If the mother is eating meat and drinking beer and going to Disneyland and going on the rides and things like that, it's like horrible for the baby in the womb, right? And she eats chilies and things like that. All that, it just causes the baby to suffer and be in anxiety. But if the mother is regularly hearing the Mahamantra, regularly chanting the Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, and associating with genuine devotees, engaging in devotional service. I remember my wife, every time she was going to have a baby, she worked until the last day. She was a pujari. She worked until the last day. And then after she finished her service, she went to the hospital and had the baby. And then the last 2 babies, she didn't even go to the hospital. She did it at home in the bathtub with one person helping her. She stopped even going to the to the hospital because she didn't like the hospital. She didn't like the way they would treat her when she went. So she was just having the babies in the bathtub in the house with one person helping her. So anyway, she was active right up to the last day. And she never really had a problem popping out the babies. They just popped out one after the other, 7 babies. So we see how by becoming active in Krishna conscious and regularly hearing Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, regularly chanting, regularly associating with devotees, eating only prasadam. That way the baby is made by prasadam, not made by hamburgers and hot dogs and pig's feet and whatever people eat nowadays. So it's very important. The whole creation starts by sound. So everything begins by sound. So if you're listening to rat music, you become a rat. People call it rap music. I call it rat music. You'll become a rat. You'll become like them, talking nonsense all the time, right? But if you listen to Bhagavatam and you listen to Bhagavad Gita and you listen to genuine devotees speaking about Krishna, you become Krishna conscious. So this chanting and hearing is the way to learn, not studying. Studying, you just learn something to pass a test. Later on, you'll forget it. But chanting, hearing and chanting, and eventually you remember, and it stays with you the rest of your life, especially if you don't engage in illicit activities. Then you become capable of hearing something once and remembering it the rest of your life. This was the way children were trained before. They were trained in celibacy. It could be girls or it could be boys. They were trained to be celibate during their formative years, up until 20 years of life. And then if they want to get married, they can get married. But they were taught to be tapasvis, living minimize their needs, material needs, maximize their learning capacity. And especially between 15 and 20, those are the most important years in the life of a person that will determine what you're going to be the rest of your life. Because you sort of wake up at puberty and start exploring the world. And you develop some experience of the world, and then those 5 years between 15 and 20 are the most important years which will determine who you're going to be the rest of your life. And if you waste those 5 years, smoking marijuana and engaging in illicit sex, you're going to be like that the rest of your life. Unfortunately, that's what happens to most kids today. They are being trained to be vishayis, sense gratifiers, especially in high school and college. And you can see that, okay, look this up, the spring break. How many kids go to Florida to get drunk, smoke drugs, and have sex? These are college kids, right? This is called spring break in Florida. And what are they doing there? You see how low class young kids have become in just 15, 20 years. They learn all these really bad habits. What's it say? Yeah, anybody see that? Spring break in Florida. College students. Good one. 1.5 million college and high school kids. Go ahead, you read it.
Approximately 1.5 million students engage in the travel during spring break, with the age range of traveling generally between 17 and 35 years old.
Okay, does it say what they do? They're taking drugs. They're, like smoking marijuana, drinking alcohol, they're eating meat, and they're having sex, and they're having parties. These are American kids in the prime of their life, and this is what they've learned after going to school 14, 15 years. To go on spring break in Florida, 1.5 million young people are going there to engage in breaking the 4 regulative principles. Look what happens when you break the 4 regulative principles right there in that second panel from the left. You see? Intoxication, illicit sex, and meat eating and gambling. It leads to massive number of people who die, right? Because of these 4 bad habits. And that's why they go to Florida at spring break, to specifically break the 4 regulative principles. Does it say what they do? Okay. All right. Anyway, just believe what I say. They do nonsense. Okay, so today we're going to start the Canto 2, Chapter 9, verse number 34. And it says, O Brahma, Krishna is speaking to Brahma, whatever appears to be of any value, if it is without relation to me, has no reality, know it as my illusory energy, that reflection which appears to be in darkness. So every time you watch a movie, every time you go to a baseball game, every time you eat meat, every time you break a regulative principle, every time you're on the internet playing video games, that is illusion. You're wasting your time. You're diverting your attention from Krishna, because none of those things have anything to do with Krishna, you see. And therefore, what does it say here? Whatever appears to be of any value, if it is without relation to me, Krishna says, has no reality. You're living in an illusion when you engage in those type of activities. You found something? No. Okay. Know it as my illusory energy, that reflection which appears to be in darkness. Now, what is a reflection that appears to be in darkness? Right there, that's a reflection that appears to be in darkness. Do you see the lights outside? Now, you see the lights here. Do you see the lights outside the window? That's an illusion. That's not real. You can go outside and you won't see them. It's only because of light on this side, darkness on that side, that there's a projection of these things, these lights here, outside. And you think there are lights outside, but there are no lights outside. That's an illusion in darkness. In other words, there has to be light on one side and darkness on the other side. And the same thing happens when you look out your rear view mirror at night when it's dark. You will see yourself in that mirror. But it's not in the mirror. It looks like it's outside the mirror. Do it tonight, but don't have an accident. Yeah?
Prabhu sent something here. This is the news. This was for March 2022. Happened in March 2022.
Where?
In March 2022 in Florida.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Yeah,
Several students on spring break overdosed on what appears to be cocaine.
What?
Several students on spring break overdosed on what appeared to be cocaine.
Cocaine.
Laced with
Fentanyl.
And were hospitalized in Fort Lauderdale on Thursday.
Did anybody die?
4 went into cardiac arrest after ingesting drug before 2 friends tried to help them by performing CPR.
Yeah, see, this is what happens. That 1.5 million kids go to Florida on spring break to take drugs, have sex, eat meat, and break all the regulative principles. Let's put it like that. These are the young people in the United States. That's how low they've become, right? And that's what happens when you associate with people. And association in schools today is horrible. Very bad association. And the teachers are just as bad as the students. You'll see many teachers have sex with students, men and women, not just the men, women also, right? Every month there's an article of a teacher that gets caught having illicit relationship with students that are like 10, 20 years younger than them, right? This is how low, this is how degraded people have become in this country. And not only in this country, in India also, and in other places. People have become perverts, right? Okay, so this verse is saying anything that's not in relationship with Krishna is illusory. It's an illusion. It's false. It misleads. It takes you away from Krishna. Now the purport says, in the previous verse, it has already been concluded that in any stage of the cosmic manifestation, its appearance, its sustenance, its growth, its in varieties, it's, one second, let me open my page here. Its interactions of different energies, its deterioration, and its disappearance all has its basic relation with the existence of the Lord. In other words, there's nothing independent of Krishna in our life. Everything we do depends on Krishna. And we are not independent. We are all being controlled by the laws of material nature, and especially the three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. Yet, we're taught by phony philosophers and speculators that we are independent. And what do? In order to train you to go to Florida on spring break and break the 4 regulative principles, they teach you in school that God does not exist because we cannot scientifically validate the existence of God. So for us, he doesn't exist. Then secondly, they teach you in school that when you die, everything is over. Now all of a sudden, they've limited you to one life. Right there, by those 2 points. Now, let me ask you, you go to school, right? Do they talk about God in your class? No, right? Do they say God exists? No. Do they say anything about God?
No, they say nothing, Maharaj.
Okay. Do they talk about what happens after death?
No.
Well, they do. As you get what grade are you in?
10th grade.
10th grade, yeah. Now, as you keep going, they will make it clear that well, let's say you talk to your friends. Do your friends think that there's anything that happens after death?
No, they don't, Maharaj.
You see? Now, how did they learn that?
Through school and parents.
Do they talk about God?
Not at all.
Do they believe God exists?
Mostly no.
You see? These are what? You're in 10th grade, right?
Yeah.
By 10th grade, the kids have already learned, most of the kids, unless they have training like in a church or a synagogue or in the Muslim schools or in Krishna conscious school. Most of the kids don't believe in God. They don't think there's anything after death. That means their whole scope of life has been reduced to one lifetime, right there. Just see how much potential they've lost already, right? And therefore, do kids in your class think they're independent?
They want to be independent.
Okay. Well, independent of their parents, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But do they think that they can get away with doing almost anything?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, there it is. This is what the culture is teaching kids today. We're not making it up. I didn't ask him to come here and say these things. Did I ask you to say these things? No. I didn't know you were going to be here. You didn't know I was going to start talking like this. This is what's going on. Wake up, parents. You're losing your kids. You're sending your kids to be educated by people that are called teachers. They're not teachers. They're demons, and they don't have the same values that you do. And you're letting your kids stay with them almost 8 hours a day to be indoctrinated in this nonsense, where the potential of a person is reduced to one life, and even in that life, there's no incentive to be God conscious. The incentive is money, 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 and sense gratification, sense gratification, sense gratification. That is the culture. Does that sound right to you? Yeah. That's what's going on. See? So it is a type of child abuse, sending children to these type of schools. It is child abuse. And that's a pretty hard thing to say, but I'm saying it because that's what it is. And you should be aware of this, that your culture is being destroyed. You're not being able to teach your kid the right things because the kids are being indoctrinated in these schools not to believe in God, not to think there's an after death, and not to believe that it's important to chant Hare Krishna or have spiritual life. They're being trained to be vishayis, sense gratifiers. Right? And above all, they think that they're independent. So here it says that in the previous verse, it has already been concluded that in any stage of the cosmic manifestation, its appearance, its sustenance, its growth, its interactions of different energies, its deterioration, and its disappearance, all has its basic relation with the existence of the personality of Godhead. That is, every step of life, birth, growth, maintenance, byproducts, meaning having children, dwindling, and death, in those 6 stages of life, everything you experience is in relationship with Krishna. It's not independent of Krishna, because he is the controller of the material nature and the modes of material nature, the 3 types of miseries of this body, miseries caused by other bodies, miseries caused by natural cataclysmic events. He's the controller of all these things. So you're not independent. None of us are independent. Now, how do we know that? Well, you did not choose to be born. Anybody remember choosing to be born? You were forced to be born. You did not choose. You're not choosing to get sick. Are you getting sick? That you're being forced to get sick. You're not choosing to get old. Are you getting old? No. You're not choosing. You're being forced to get old. And you're not going to choose to die unless you're crazy. But you're being forced to die. So this right there, that proves that you're not independent, or we are not independent. I'm also in the same boat as you are. It's all the same boat, right? Birth, old age, disease, and death. Then you eat something, you have to go to the bathroom. You eat or drink, you have to go to the bathroom. You're forced to eat, and then you're forced to go to the bathroom. You're forced to work to maintain yourself, and you're forced to take rest and sleep. And then you're forced to wake up and go to work again. There's everything you do, you're forced to do it. The only thing you're not forced to do is when you're going to eat, you can choose whether you want to eat meat or you want to eat veg. You want to, you're not forced to, let's say, when you decide to do something, you can do it legally or illegally. No one can stop you, right? If you decide to do something illegal, you can do it. So you have the choice of how you're going to do these things that you're forced to do, right? But you're not forced to be sinful, and you're not forced to be pious. You have to choose those 2 points. In other words, every decision you make, either you follow Krishna's instructions or you don't follow Krishna's instructions. You're not forced to follow Krishna's instructions. You're not forced to not follow. You choose. But you're forced to act. You cannot stop acting. Like, for example, every day a human being is breathing in and exhaling 22,000 times. Every day. Did you know that, right? We discussed it, right? But how about some of you ladies? Do you know that every day you're taking 22,000 breaths? Did you ever realize that? Look it up on the internet. You'll see. You're being forced to breathe 22,000 times a day. Otherwise, you die. And there are many things that you're forced to do. Now, how you do it, like for example, you're not forced to smoke a cigarette. And smoking cigarettes is not good for your lungs. In fact, let's take a look at something. Look up in the internet what the lungs of a chain smoker looks like. They have pictures of that in the internet. Usually your lungs, you can't live without your lungs, let's put it like that, right? So you'll see a picture of a chain smoker who obviously has died, and their lungs are black. Huh? You have it? Okay. So why don't you give it to Dhananjaya so he can show everybody. Go ahead, give it to him. You have it? Okay. So you see, you're not forced to smoke. You voluntarily start smoking because of peer pressure, right? And what happens? Eventually, like I saw my father, he used to smoke 4 packs of cigarette a day. No one forced him to do it. And he got lung cancer. And he suffered like anything and died. Right? I saw him dying day after day. For 9 months, he suffered. He would scream in the middle of the night, "Give me poison. I want to die. I can't stand this pain." Right? And I was only just a little kid. I was like, I couldn't believe what was happening to him. Right? So you see, you're not forced to smoke, but people choose to do it. You're not forced to have illicit sexual relationship. People choose to do those things. Okay, what's it look like? Is it horrible? That's what happens to your lungs when you smoke. So the lungs are meant to breathe in air and separate the oxygen, and that oxygen keeps you alive, and it's distributed throughout your whole body by the blood. That's what keeps you alive. And by the way, oxygen is the #1 healing substance. You can heal any disease with oxygen. Most people don't know that, and it's very cheap. Okay? You can heal cancer. You can heal heart problems. You can heal diabetes. Everything with oxygen, right? Because that's the #1 thing that you have. That's why you're taking 22,000 breaths a day. Okay. So it says here, all the different energies and reactions and activities, everything is in relationship with Krishna. Nothing is independent of Krishna. Everything in your body, everything in your mind, every experience you have, it's all under the control of Krishna. Now, but he's not forcing you to smoke or engage in sinful activity. Those are things you have freedom to do, just like you have the freedom to chant Hare Krishna also. And you have the freedom to come to class. And you have the freedom to go out on Sankirtan. You know, those are all decisions you can make. But you can't stop acting. So if you don't come to the class, then you go to a bar and drink some beer, you can do it. No one's going to stop you. Krishna's not going to stop you. See? So therefore, you have to learn as soon as possible, and education should start right after while the baby is still in the womb. Education is to start already when the baby is in the womb, by the mother regularly hearing lectures, regularly hearing kirtans, regularly chanting Hare Krishna, regularly eating prasadam, so the body of the child is made with prasad, not with hamburgers and hot dogs and other things like that. So you see, this is science. This is real science. And there should be Garbhadam Sanskar, that the husband and wife should chant at least 64 rounds on the day that they want to conceive a baby. And they have to purify themselves by this chanting and hearing and fasting a little bit. And then they can conceive. And Krishna will place a genuine, pure devotee into the womb, into the sperm, and the sperm connects with the womb, and then the child begins to grow in the body of the wife. See, this is the science of how to have good population. And when people don't do this, then they get these children that are always misbehaving and fidgeting and always getting into trouble, or else becoming criminals and so forth. Okay, so then it says, and as such, whenever there is forgetfulness of the prime relation with the Lord, and whenever things are accepted as real without being related to the Lord, that conception is called a product of the illusory energy of the Lord. So, like for example, let's say you go to a modern yoga class, and the first day, the first thing they tell you is, our yoga is not religious. Is that true? Have any of you experienced that? Anybody? Have any of you gone to yoga classes? Yes? Did they say that in the beginning?
I didn't attend the first class, but in the middle I joined.
Well, was there any hint that there's some yoga, there's religiosity in the yoga? No. No, the first thing they tell you is this is not religion. This is, yoga. Now, look up the definition of yoga in the dictionary. You're going to see how misleading dictionaries are. Most of the words in dictionaries are incomplete or false. Most of the definitions in the dictionaries are like that. So, what does it say? Go ahead, microphone. What does it say?
It says yoga is a Hindu philosophy.
Wait a minute, stop right there. Yoga is a Hindu. Is that what yoga is? A Hindu philosophy? No, it has nothing to do with Hinduism. It has nothing to do with Hinduism, right? In fact, Hinduism is the wrong word. It doesn't exist. There's no word in Sanskrit saying Hindu. See, so go ahead, read the rest of it. Yeah.
Yoga is a Hindu philosophy that encompasses a variety of practices which most commonly include postures, breathing exercises, meditation, mantras, and lifestyle changes, diet, sleep, hygiene, etc.
Okay, now that is a wrong definition of yoga. Okay, so let's see what yoga actually is. Yoga is a Sanskrit word, and it means connecting to God. That's what the meaning of the word is in Sanskrit. Look up the Sanskrit definition of yoga. What's it say?
The root word is.
Huh?
So I think I heard it. The root word is huge, means to connect.
Right. But look it up. Look it up in a Sanskrit dictionary. Microphone.
Have it. So yoga comes from the Sanskrit root yuj, that means union, to unite or to connect. It is the union of your mind, body and spirit.
With what? Union with what? Union with a stone or something?
Yeah,
Or
for now the definition here is just the union of mind, body and spirit.
well, that is a misleading definition.
Definitely.
It is true that yoga means union, but union with Krishna, with God. What's the most significant union, right? And in Bhagavad Gita, it's defined like that. It means uniting with God.
Yeah,
Now, it
then-
doesn't mean you become one with God. It means that you follow God's instructions. Just like if your children listen to everything that the parents say, they are in union with the parents. Whether you meet the child or the parent, they have the same opinion about things in life or the same understanding. So that means they're one in, let's say, knowledge and duty. So dharma means the occupational duty of a person, right? Now, when you have sanatana dharma, that's the eternal occupation or duties of a person. And those duties are being connected to God by following God's instructions. That is the real meaning of yoga. That's the real meaning of union. It doesn't mean you become God. It means that you follow God's instructions. Therefore, you are one in quality and in purpose, right? So you see the definitions are very misleading or incomplete in the dictionary. Okay, so here it's saying, whenever there's forgetfulness of this prime relation with the Lord, and whenever things are accepted as real without being related to the Lord, the conception is called a product of the illusory energy of the Lord. Because nothing can exist without the Lord, it should be known that the illusory energy is also an energy of the Lord. The right conclusion of dovetailing everything in relationship with the Lord is called yoga maya, or the energy of union. There it is. It's defining yoga, right?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes.
I just wanted to add to that. So yoga, when it brought to West, they did not want to add super soul there. So they made it mind, body and breath.
Right.
And some people talk about cosmic energy and some people do say super soul. But when it brought to West from the East, the super soul concept is taken out.
Well, but also, it came to the West and then went back to India. The Western understanding went back to India also. So now they say, this is hot yoga, started by so-and-so Swami. It has nothing to do with religion, right?
Yes, Maharaj.
It boomeranged back to India. It came from India with the right understanding, and then it came to the West and became adulterated, and then it went back to India adulterated. This is how dangerous life is today. Right? Haribol. Okay, so it says here that whenever things are accepted as real without being related to the Lord, that conception is called a product of the illusory energy of the Lord, or Maya. Because nothing can exist without the Lord, it should be known that the illusory energy is also an energy of the Lord. The right conclusion of dovetailing everything. Now the word dovetailing means you connect everything to Krishna, or that's the meaning of yoga, connecting to the Lord. So every step of life, if we're connected to the instructions that Krishna gives us in Bhagavad Gita. Now, 5,000 years ago, you can see in the second panel from the left there, 5,000 years ago, it's on the top, Jai Shishi Radha Nila Madhava Ki Jai. Krishna told people 5,000 years ago in Bhagavad Gita, don't eat meat, don't gamble, don't have illicit sex, don't take intoxication. And now, 5,000 years later, those four things are integral part of American culture. And the result is all the deaths that take place every year. It runs into the hundreds, millions of people every year dying by eating meat, by having illicit sex, by engaging in intoxication and gambling. So 5,000 years ago, Krishna warned us, and then after 1,000 years, after the beginning of the Kali Yuga, the sages in Naimisharanya heard the Srimad Bhagavatam, and to prove that the Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita can solve all the miseries of human life in this age. But nobody's listening. And the people that you would think would listen is people born in Bharat or in India, where that was the culture of India for millions of years, and they are the most insulated people. They're not serious about following Sanatana Dharma. They're serious about imitating the Americans and the Europeans, right? And this is a tragedy. And how is it happening? Because of the educational system. The educational system in India, except for the Muslims and the Christians, is bad. The Muslims and the Christians in India, they teach their kids God exists. The Hindus are not taught. They say, oh, there's many gods. You can choose any one you want. You can put your grandfather on the altar. It's okay. This is complete nonsense, right? At least the Muslims say, Wahad Allah. There's only one God. The Christians say, Jesus is God, right? The Hindus say, oh, there are many gods, which means there's no gods, right? As soon as you have a bureaucracy of gods, just like if you have a bureaucracy in government, you can't put the blame on anybody. Right? So as soon as you say there are many, many gods, that means there's no God, right? No one is responsible. Okay, so then what do? To get around everything, they say God is not a person. So that way, you have no personal responsibility to anybody. So the Arya Samaj, they clearly say God is not a person. The Mayavadis clearly say God is not a person. The Buddhists also say God is not a person. So then there's no personal responsibility. If I say, oh, your father is not a person, you say, oh, really? Oh, that's good. Now I can do whatever I want. You see. So this is how dangerous culture has become today. All right, so because nothing can exist without the Lord, it should be known that the illusory energy is also an energy of the Lord. The right conclusion of dovetailing everything in relationship with the Lord is called Yoga Maya, or the energy of union. And the wrong conception of detaching a thing from its relationship with the Lord is called the Lord's Daivi Maya, or Mahamaya. Both the Mayas also have connection with the Lord, because nothing can exist without being related to Him. As such, the wrong conception of detaching relationships from the Lord is not false, but illusory. Misconceiving one thing for another thing is called illusion. For example, accepting a rope as a snake is illusion, but the rope is not false. The rope, as it exists in the front of the illusion person, is not at all false, but the acceptance is illusory. Therefore, the wrong conception of accepting this material manifestation as being divorced from the energy of the Lord is illusion, but it is not false. This illusory conception is called the reflection of the reality in the darkness of ignorance. Anything that appears as apparently not being produced out of my energy, Krishna says, is called Maya, or illusion. The conception that the living entity is formless, or that the Supreme Lord is formless, is also illusion. In the Bhagavad Gita 2.12, it was said by the Lord in the midst of the battlefield that the warriors standing in front of Arjuna himself, and even the Lord, had all existed before. They were existing on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and they would all continue to be individual personalities in the future also, even after the annihilation of the present body, and even after being liberated from the bondage of material existence. So this means that each one of us existed in the past, we're existing now, and we will continue to exist in the future. Whether our body dies, it doesn't matter. The soul never dies. And right now we have two bodies. We have a gross body made of earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, and then a subtle body made of mind, intelligence, and false ego. So when we die, only the gross body dies. The subtle body doesn't die, and the soul doesn't die. But the soul is taken to its next body by the subtle body made of mind, intelligence, and a false ego. So the mind has the memory of everything we've done, and the intelligence has made decisions about how to act based on our experiences, and the false ego has the false conception of life, that we're independent of God. So that takes us to our next material body. Now, if we purify the ego, if we purify the intelligence and purify the mind, then when we die, we go back to Godhead. But if it's contaminated, all those three things are contaminated, then we get another material body, and there are 8,400,000 species. So we're not necessarily going to be a human being in the next life. We can end up going back into very low-level human beings, like trees or birds or bugs or worms or snakes or cows or donkeys, whatever. Elephants, giraffes. There's 8,400,000 species in the material world. So everything depends on how we're using this body. if we're using all the assets of the body to acquire knowledge of Krishna, and always remembering Krishna and working for Krishna and sacrificing everything to please the Lord, we go back to Godhead. And if we're just selfishly living for aham mameti, I, me, and mine syndrome, never thinking about God, then we stay in the material world. Okay? So everything we do has a connection to Krishna. Either we're remembering Krishna or we're forgetting Krishna, but we're never independent of Krishna, you see. So the demons, they're against God. So they are God conscious, in a sense, right? Because they're rejecting God, right? So they're still related to God by that rejection, but they don't realize that. So someone like Kamsa, he could not get Krishna out of his mind because he was afraid that Krishna was going to kill him. It was prophesied like that. So he was Krishna conscious, but in a negative way. And Prahlad Maharaj, he was Krishna conscious in a positive way. Right? So both were Krishna conscious, one in a negative way, and he had to suffer for that, and the other in a positive way, and he was liberated from all suffering. Right? Okay, so therefore, no one can avoid Krishna. Either you're going to be negatively related to him or positively related to him. So all the people going on the spring break to Florida and breaking the regulative principles, they are forgetful of God. There's still God is in the picture, but they're forgetful of God. And the devotees, kids that refuse to go to Florida on the spring break, but come to the temple to do service during the spring break, they are remembering God. So in both ways, either they're forgetting or they're remembering. There's some relationship to God. But the positive relationship liberates a person from the cycle of birth and death, and the negative relationship keeps people in the horrible cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease. Okay, so therefore it continues. Anything that appears as apparently not being produced out of my energy, Krishna says, is called Maya, or illusion. So everything you see is made of either material nature. It's a combination of material nature and spiritual nature. Like, for example, a human being, they have a soul that is spiritual, and they have a body that is material. So everything then, the plant, the fish, the birds, the snakes, the mammals, the human beings, the demigods, they have a soul that's covered by a body that's made of material nature. So, and then when you see rocks, mountains, and you see deserts, and you see ocean, and things like that, that's made of material energy only, right? This microphone, this carpet. So there is no individual soul in these things. Krishna is present in every atom of these things, but there's no individual soul. So therefore, there's no desires. Like the carpet doesn't have any desires, therefore it's not moving. The microphone doesn't have any desires, therefore it's not acting on its own. But it is, but Krishna is present in every atom of the microphone. That's why it's functioning, right? And Krishna is present in the carpet, in every atom. That's why it stays together, right? So if we look in reality, everything is made up of matter and spirit, everything that moves and has life. And everything that is not moving and that doesn't have life is made of matter only. But even in the matter, Krishna is present. That's why the universe functions in an orderly way. See, if the universe was chaotic and Krishna was not involved in anything in the universe, it would be impossible to have science, because no one would be able to predict what's going to happen. Just like they're predicting when the sun comes up and the sun goes down every day. And their prediction is usually correct, right? They're predicting when spring starts. It's just like Makara Sankranti, right? It's the beginning of spring. And they're predicting when winter comes, and this and that. So it's because the whole universe is functioning in an orderly way. Now, who made that order? They're trying to convince you it happened by accident. This is nonsense. How can you, everything that they have done, like the carpet, the granite, slates, and the curtains, and the microphone, and your car, all these things are made by intelligent people. None of them happened by accident. So everything in our life that we're using, the washing machine, the oven, all these things are made by intelligent people, right? But when it comes to the universe, which is much more complicated than your television and so forth, they say it happened by accident, and it's going on in a regular, orderly way. This is the craziest statement in the world, that it happened by accident, that no one engineered it. Whereas everything else, you agree, is engineered. That those chairs, they were engineered by someone. See? The lights, the electricity, everything's engineered by intelligent people in our life, but the whole universe, no, it happened by accident. This is nonsense. There's no rationality. The so-called big philosophers and scientists, they are the dumbest people in the world. They're not smart. They're trying to convince you to be dumb also by saying it all happened by accident. But here, what do we learn in the Bhagavatam? Nothing happens by accident. Everything is controlled by Krishna. Krishna is present everywhere by Paramatma. And because of that, things happen in an orderly way. The seasons change in an orderly way. The planets, the earth revolves on its axis in an orderly way. It also revolves around the sun in an orderly way. And the sun and the whole galaxy also goes around the universal axis in an orderly way. All this stuff is being controlled. It's not happening by accident, right? Like, for example, right now, this Earth is rotating on its axis 1,000 miles a minute, or 1,000 miles an hour. Now, do you feel any shaking? If your car goes 100 miles an hour, it starts shaking, right? This Earth right now is rotating on its axis and 1,000 miles an hour, and it's not shaking. It's perfectly stable. Now, the Earth rotates around the sun 60,000 miles an hour. Around the sun. You feel any shaking? No. The sun and the galaxy rotates around the universal axis of the universe 400,000 miles an hour. Now, all these movements are going on right now. Who's controlling this? You see, your car goes 100, 120 miles an hour, it starts shaking. And all these tremendous speeds are going on, and there's no shaking. It's stabilized, you see. Now, Putin is not doing it. Crazy Joe is not doing it. No. But somebody's doing it, because things don't happen like this in such a predictable, orderly way unless there's intelligence behind it. See? So the scientists, the philosophers say there's no God. They are lying. There's outright, plain old lies. They don't know what they're talking about. Right? Okay, so it's just like a doctor, you know, when you have some pain in your stomach, you know, and the doctor does 6 weeks of diagnosis, you know, CAT scans and biopsy and this thing, that. And after all that research, he says, well, we're not exactly sure what it is. What? After all that, I had to spend $1,000 for you to do all these, you know, taking the blood and the CAT scan, and this scan and that scan, and you say you're not sure? Well, Therefore, that's not a real doctor. That's a charlatan, right? So, in the same way, after so many years of science and research, they keep saying that the universe started by an accident. That means they don't know what they're talking about. They've been doing science for what? Since the Middle Ages. I mean, even beginning with the Greeks, there was science going on. And they're saying that that no one is behind the creation. That means they're nonsense. They don't know what they're talking about. Right? Okay, so here it says, anything that appears as apparently not being produced out of my energy, Krishna says, is called Maya, illusion. The conception that the living entity is formless or that the Supreme Lord is formless is also illusion. In the Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, 12th verse, it was said by the Lord in the midst of the battlefield of Kurukshetra that the warriors standing in front of Arjuna himself, and even the Lord, had all existed before they were existing in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and they would all continue to be individual personalities in the future also, even after the annihilation of the present body, and even after being liberated from the bondage of material existence. In all circumstances, the Lord and the living entities are individual personalities, and the personal feature of both the Lord and the living beings are never abolished. Only the influence of the illusory energy, the reflection of light in darkness, can, by the mercy of the Lord, be removed. In the material world, the light of the sun is also not independent, nor is that of the moon. The real source of life is the Brahma Jyoti, which diffuses light from the transcendental body of the Lord, and the same light is reflected in varieties of light, the light of the sun, the light of the moon, the light of fire, or the light of electricity. So the identity of the self as being unconnected with the Supreme Self, the Lord, is also illusion, and the false claim, I am the Supreme, is the last illusory snare of the same Maya, or the external energy of the Lord. So all the people claiming that Atma becomes Paramatma, they're all nonsense. There's no such thing. Okay. And they're teaching, that most of the gurus teach this, Atma becomes Paramatma. Look that up. Atma becomes Paramatma. Okay. This is being taught, and it's nonsense. Right? So, the Vedanta Sutra, in the very beginning, affirms that everything is born from the Supreme, and thus, as explained in the previous verse, all individual living entities are born from the energy of the Supreme Living Being, the personality of Godhead. Brahma himself was born from the energy of the Lord, and all other living entities are born from the energy of the Lord through the agency of Brahma. None of them has any existence without being dovetailed with the Supreme Lord. Anything there, Atma becomes Paramatma. Anything?
The relationship between the Atma and Paramatma.
No, the statement, Atma becomes Paramatma. Okay, so the independence of the individual living entity is not real independence, but is just the reflection of the real independence, existing in the Supreme Being, the Lord. The false claim of supreme independence by the conditioned souls is illusion, and this conclusion is admitted in this verse. So, these are the things we have to teach our kids, and we have to learn ourselves. There's no such thing as we are independent. At every moment we're being controlled. The only independence we have is to either follow Krishna's instructions or not follow Krishna's instructions. Otherwise, there's no independence. Did you find anything? No. Okay.
Maharaj, can I read?
Yes.
Now, what is the meaning of unification of Atma with Paramatma?
Go ahead.
Yoga is a union of Atma and Paramatma. In simple words, yoga is a way to join God.
Okay, I'm not clearly hearing you. Hold the microphone a little bit farther away and speak slowly.
Yoga is a union of Atma and Paramatma.
Okay, there it is. Atma and Paramatma, union. Go ahead.
In simple words, yoga is a way to join God, that is, merge of soul with God and experience of oneness with Him.
Okay, so that is Mayavad philosophy, and it's wrong. The connecting to God is by following God's instructions. Just like a child who follows the parents' instructions is one with the parents. It's not that they become the parent. The child never becomes the parent. There's always a difference between the child and the parent. But these people are saying that you can become God by merging with God when Atma becomes Paramatma. You see, the whole concept is false. Yes, go ahead.
In one of the main holy scriptures for Hinduism, the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, yoga is even described as evenness of temper.
Well, that's okay.
That's all it goes to.
Okay.
Yeah, Maharaj, I'm searching it in the OpenAI.
What?
Have you heard the OpenAI?
Open.
Open Artificial Intelligence. ChatGPT.
Okay.
So it's siding with the Mayavadis.
Which is,
It says it is believed that the individual soul has the potential to merge or unite with the ultimate reality or Godhead, Paramatma.
yeah, there it is. That's Mayavad philosophy. Atma becomes Paramatma. This is being taught on a massive scale, and it's completely false.
So the AI typically
Well,
picks
now,
up
why do we
whatever.
say it's completely false? Because Krishna says in 2nd chapter, verse number 12, what does he say? He says that Natvevaham chatunasam natvam nemi janadibaha nachaivina bhavishyama sarvivayam atakparam. Hey Arjuna, never was there a time that I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. That means that the individuality of you and me, the jivas, and the individuality of Krishna are eternal. They can never be wiped out. There's no such thing as Atma becomes Paramatma. But the Atma, the jiva, you and me, we can be connected to Krishna by agreeing to follow his instructions. Then we are one in quality because we have eternity, we have knowledge, and we have bliss. And we have vigraha, a specific identity in body or soul. So this Atma becomes connected to the Lord through devotion and love. So therefore there's oneness in the sense of total agreement with the Lord. Just like in a family, if everybody listens to what Pitaji says, there's total oneness in the family. Nobody does anything without the permission of Pitaji. Okay? So therefore, there's oneness in that family. But everybody keeps their individuality. Right? So that the son doesn't become the father. That would be nonsense. You would say, what? That's just not true. The father's a distinct person, the son is... These people are trying to say the son becomes the father. Atma becomes Paramatma. You see, it's nonsense. But oneness is in agreement. Just like a husband and wife, if they always agree together in every let's say action and every desire, they're one, right? You meet the wife and she'll say the same thing that the husband says. Yeah, we go to church, we believe in God, we want our children to be baptized, we want our children to grow up to be God-centered. They both have the same. It's not that the wife says, well, I don't believe in God. And the husband says, well, I believe in God, but my wife doesn't believe in God. So they're not one. They're going to be arguing all the time because they both have a different goal in life. Right? So when you have oneness in a family, that means husband and wife agree on all subject matters. You know, how to proceed, how to do things, how to treat their children, how to worship God. So a family that prays together stays together. So that's oneness, because you have, both the husband and wife have a connection to Krishna through service and through devotion, right? So therefore they're going to be together eternally. That's why there are eternal couples in Vaikuntha. The husband and wife both were dedicated to serving Krishna together, and they cooperated with each other, and they both went back to Godhead. There are billions and billions of couples in Vaikuntha. And even in Goloka, you know, there's Nanda Maharaj, Yasoda Mai. They're a couple. There's Vasudeva and Devaki. They're a couple. They're liberated because both of them had the same desires to please Krishna. In fact, Vasudeva and Devaki, they meditated for 12,000 years. You read Krishna book, you'll see, or 10th canto Srimad Bhagavatam. They meditated together 10,000 years in order to have Krishna as their son. That means they both have the same goal in life, right? So this is oneness. It's not that, Devaki became Vasudeva. No, that's nonsense. This is what the Mayavadis are trying to teach. You know, you become God. You have become Narayana. No, you don't become Narayana. But you become the devotee of Narayana, yes. That means you keep your identity, Narayana keeps his identity eternally, but you are one in purpose. Okay, we'll stop right there. So this second mantra, what is it talking about? This second mantra is talking about, the first mantra is talking about all the expansions of the Lord. Okay, that's good. And the second mantra is talking about how are the different energies of the Lord working? How are the different energies of the Lord working? Like you and me, we are energies of the Lord, right? We're called the marginal energy of the Lord. And the Lord has internal energy. And the Lord has external energy in the material, in the form of the material nature. So how are these energies working? That's what this second mantra of the Chaturvyuha is going to explain. Okay, and it's begun to explain by saying what is illusory and what is real. Right? You won't be able to understand how the energies of the Lord are functioning unless you understand what is real and what is real. So if you accept by looking out that window that there are lights outside, you are in an illusion. Right? So if you accept that I am this body, it's as illusory as those lights outside. It's not true that at any point. See, what is an illusion? It's to believe something that was never true to be true. So we were never this body. This body is changing all the time. Which body you're talking about, right? And then you've already had many bodies in the past, and you might probably have more bodies in the future. You cannot say, I am this body. Something that's always changing is not who you are. But you're the witness of all the changes. That's who you are, and that's your consciousness, which is the symptom of the soul. So now you know who you actually are. You're not the body. But everybody today believes, I am this body, I am Andhra, I am Telangana, I am Bangladeshi, I am Bengali, this thing, that thing, I am this, I am that. All false ideas. That's why there's so many problems in the world. People believe things that are not true to be true. And then they act in a deluded state of mind. Okay, so now we'll continue when I come back from India, I guess. That is to learn how the different energies of the Lord are working. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Any questions? Okay, so I looked up. First of all, there was one thing I was not able to find yesterday, but I found it in my notes, and that is, 1 second. The 7th chapter, 8th verse. 7th chapter, 8th verse, which says, one who knows God knows that the impersonal conception and the personal conception are simultaneously present in everything, and that there is no contradiction. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya established this sublime doctrine, Achintya Bheda Abheda Tattva, simultaneous and inconceivable oneness and difference. The light of the sun and the moon. Okay, so in everything, there is the personal and impersonal concept. Now, the Mayavadis say there's only the impersonal concept. The personal concept is false. That's a major difference between the Mayavadis and the Vaishnavas. Vaishnavas say, in what we just read, that one who knows God knows that the impersonal conception and the personal conception are simultaneously present in everything, and that there is no contradiction. So Krishna, he is the source of everything. So he is Paramatma, and he's also Brahma Jyoti. The effulgence of his body is also part and parcel of him. So he has both a personal and impersonal, reality. The Mayavadis claim there's only the impersonal reality. There's nothing else. So that is illusion. That is false. But the Vaishnavas, they know that you can attain Brahman realization, and you can go further to Paramatma realization, and you can go further to Bhagavan realization. That is the full gamut of realization of God. The Mayavadis artificially limit themselves to the Brahman effulgence, and they fall down, even if they attain it. Okay? So in everything, there is personal and impersonal. Like, for example, in your office, let's say you're working for Amazon. In your office, you don't see Jeff Bezos. So, but he's impersonally present because everything he dictates, you have to follow. See? But then maybe once a year, they'll have some big party or some big conference, and Jeff will come and speak. Now you're seeing him. So you're experiencing him impersonally in the office because everything that you're forced to do in the office is coming from him. But when you go to the once a year or once every 5 year big seminar and he speaks, you're seeing him personally. So in everything there's a personal and impersonal. And there's no controversy about it. The only controversy is when people say something false, when they say there's only impersonalism, there's nothing else. That's called Kevala Advaita philosophy. Absolute oneness. And denying the existence of a personal form of God. And just saying that God is this energy or light. That is false. God is much more than just the light energy that's emanating from his body. Okay, so that was one point. The second point was those two verses in which there seems to be a difference in the duration of time of the life of Brahma between one purport and the other. Actually, there isn't. I did the math. So you can come and talk to me personally, and I'll show you all the calculation. Right? It comes out to approximately both ways. It comes out to approximately 300 trillion years. It's the duration of Brahma's either meditation or his life. He meditated for 300 trillion years, and his lifespan is also approximately 300 trillion years. In both ways it came out, it's about the same. Okay. Okay, so those were the and then Lord Shiva, well, yes, there's that verse in the 4th canto, 4th chapter. I got it somewhere here. 4th canto, 4th chapter. where he explains about Lord Shiva. And basically, everything I said was validated by that purport. Let me see where that is. I got too many papers here. Okay, we'll come back to it next time. I'm not finding it. Let me see if I have it here. Okay, I'm not finding it. Maybe I missed it. Anyway, whatever I said about Lord Shiva was validated by that fourth chapter, fourth canto, fourth chapter, was it 24th verse or something like that? Why don't you look it up? Let me see if I have it on my cell phone. Yeah, I have it. Okay. It's the fourth chapter, fourth canto, fourth chapter, 16th verse. And it says, do you think that greater, more respectable personalities than you, such as Lord Brahma, do not know this inauspicious person who goes under the name of Lord Shiva? He associates with demons in the crematorium. His locks of hair are scattered all over his body, and he is garlanded with human skulls and smeared with ashes from the crematorium. But in spite of all these inauspicious qualities, great personalities like Brahma honor him by accepting the flowers offered to his lotus feet and placing them with great respect on their heads. Purport. It is useless to condemn a great personality like Lord Shiva, and this is being stated by his wife Sati, to establish the supremacy of her husband. First, he said, you call Lord Shiva inauspicious because he associates with demons in crematoriums, covers his body with the ashes of the dead, and garlands himself with the skulls of human beings. You have shown so many defects, but you do not know that his position is always transcendental. Although he appears inauspicious, why do personalities like Brahma respect the dust of his lotus feet and place on their heads with great respect those very garlands which are condemned by you? Since Sati was a chaste woman and the wife of Lord Shiva, it was her duty to establish the elevated position of Lord Shiva, not only by sentiment, but by facts. Lord Shiva is not an ordinary living entity. This is the conclusion of Vedic scripture. He is neither on the level of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, nor on the level of the ordinary living entities. Brahma is in almost all cases an ordinary living entity. Sometimes when there's no ordinary living entity available, the post of Brahma is occupied by an expansion of Lord Vishnu. But generally, this post is occupied by a greatly pious living entity within this universe. Thus, Lord Shiva's position is constitutionally higher than that of Lord Brahma, although Lord Shiva appeared as the son of Brahma. Here it is mentioned that even personalities like Brahma accept the so-called inauspicious flowers and the dust of the lotus feet of Lord Shiva. Great sages like Marichi, Atri, Brigu, and others among the 9 great sages who are descendants of Brahma also respect Lord Shiva in such a way because they all know that Lord Shiva is not an ordinary living entity. In many Puranas, it is sometimes asserted that a demigod is elevated to such a high position that he is almost on an equal level with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. But the conclusion that Lord Vishnu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead is confirmed in every scripture. Lord Shiva is described in the Brahma Samhita to be like curd or yogurt. Curd is not different from milk. Since milk is transformed into curd, in one sense, curd is also milk. Similarly, Lord Shiva is in one sense the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but in another sense, he is not. Just as curd is milk, although we have to distinguish between the two. These descriptions are in the Vedic literature. Whether we find that a demigod occupies a position apparently more elevated than that of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it is just to draw the devotee's attention to that particular demigod. It is also stated in the Bhagavad Gita 9:25 that if one wants to worship a particular demigod, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, who is sitting in everyone's heart, gives one greater and greater attachment for the demigod so that one may be elevated to the demigod's abode. Yanti Deva Rata Devan. By worshipping demigods, one can elevate himself to the abodes of the demigods. Similarly, by worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can be elevated to the spiritual kingdom. This is stated in different places in Vedic literature. Here, Lord Shiva is praised by Sati, partially due to her personal respect for Lord Shiva, since he is her husband, and partially due to his exalted position, which exceeds that of ordinary living entities, even Lord Brahma. The position of Lord Shiva is accepted by Lord Brahma, so Daksha, Sati's father, should also recognize him. That was the point of Sati's statement. She did not actually come to her father's house to participate in the function, although before coming she pleaded with her husband that she wanted to see her sisters and her mother. That was a plea only, for actually at heart she maintained the idea that she would convince her father, Daksha, that it was useless to continue being envious of Lord Shiva. That was her main purpose. When she was unable to convince her father, she gave up the body he had given her, as will be seen in the following verses. So, most of everything we said about Lord Shiva was validated by this purport. So those were the questions that were unanswered yesterday. Hari Bol. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. I still haven't been able to get to the Chaitanya Charitamrita. There's a lot more to be said, but we'll do that later. Thank you very much. Hari Bol. Hari Bol. Time to take rest, to wake up early.